The potter's hands, a story of redemption and purpose. Jacob sat on the dusty steps of his small, crumbling house, staring at the ground. The weight of failure pressed on him like a mountain he could never climb. His business had collapsed, his friends had abandoned him, and his faith was hanging by a thread. He had tried everything, working harder, praying, fasting, but nothing changed. "Maybe God has forgotten me," he whispered bitterly. Dreams turned to dust. Just a few years ago, life had been so different. Jacob had been full of dreams. He had started his carpentry business with high hopes, believing that God would bless his efforts. The first few months were promising. His handcrafted furniture was in demand, and customers praised his work. He worked tirelessly, often staying up late to meet deadlines. He prayed over every piece, asking God to expand his business so he could provide for his family and give generously to the poor. But one by one, things fell apart. The economy plummeted, debts mounted, and soon customers stopped coming. He adjusted his prices, tried to cut costs, but nothing worked. Then came betrayal. His closest friend and business partner took a loan in Jacob's name and disappeared, leaving him drowning in debt. To make matters worse, his landlord increased the rent on his workshop, forcing him to shut it down. Friends who once praised his work now avoided him. He could hear their whispers, see the pity in their eyes. "Maybe I'm cursed," Jacob thought, his heart growing colder with each passing day. The weight of disappointment crushed him, and his prayers became empty words. He questioned God. If God was truly with him, why did everything he touched crumble? A mysterious encounter. As the sun began to set, Jacob sat on his doorstep, lost in thought. He barely noticed the elderly man approaching until a shadow fell over him. "Son, why do you look so troubled?" the man asked, his voice gentle but firm. Jacob glanced up. The man's face was lined with age, but his eyes held wisdom and kindness. "I've lost everything," Jacob confessed. "No matter what I do, it all falls apart. I don't understand why God is letting this happen." The old man nodded as if he understood. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." Jacob hesitated. He had nothing to lose. With a weary sigh, he followed the man through the winding streets until they arrived at a small pottery workshop. The air smelled of wet clay and burning firewood. Shelves lined the walls, filled with vases, some cracked, others gleaming beautifully. In the corner, a large kiln glowed softly, its heat radiating through the room. Lessons from the potter's wheel. The old man picked up a lump of clay and placed it on the wheel. "Watch closely." He began shaping the clay with his hands, molding it carefully. As he worked, he spoke. "This clay has no form, but in the hands of the potter, it becomes something beautiful." Jacob watched, fascinated. But what if it breaks? What if the clay is too weak? The old man smiled. "Then the potter remolds it. Sometimes it must be broken to be rebuilt stronger. See this vase?" He pointed to a beautiful, glazed vessel. "It cracked in the fire, but instead of discarding it, I reinforced it, making it more durable and valuable. The fire that could have destroyed it only made it stronger." Jacob's heart pounded. "Are you saying God is like the potter, that he's molding me through my struggles?" The old man nodded. "Exactly. Sometimes he allows things to fall apart so he can build something better. The fire you endure is not meant to destroy you, but to refine you. The potter never discards his clay. He keeps working, shaping, and transforming it into something glorious." A renewed perspective. Tears filled Jacob's eyes. He had been resisting God's hands, trying to shape his own life. But maybe, just maybe, God was preparing him for something greater. He had seen his struggles as punishment, but now he understood. They were part of the process. Days passed, and Jacob kept returning to the workshop. The old man, whom he now called Master Eli, taught him how to shape the clay, how to be patient as it took form, and most importantly, how the fire was necessary for completion. Without the fire, the pot remains fragile. It's the heat that strengthens it, Eli explained. One evening, Jacob sat beside the kiln, watching the flames dance inside. Master Eli, I think I understand now. My life has been in the fire, but it wasn't to destroy me. It was to refine me. Eli smiled. Yes, Jacob. And now you are ready for the next step, a new beginning. A year later, Jacob's life had transformed. He had started a new business, not carpentry, but pottery. At first, people mocked him. A carpenter turned potter? What a failure. But he didn't let the words shake him. His story of perseverance and faith spread throughout the town, and people came not just to buy his vases, but to hear his testimony. One day, an old customer who had abandoned him during his lowest moment walked into his shop. Jacob, I never thought you'd recover after everything. What happened to you? Jacob smiled, running his fingers over a newly finished vase. I was in the potter's hands, and he wasn't finished with me yet. A message of hope. One evening, Jacob stood in front of a congregation, sharing his journey. I thought I was forgotten, he said, but I was simply in the potter's hands. If you're struggling, don't lose hope. Trust the process. The fire you are facing is shaping you into something greater than you can imagine. As he spoke, faces in the crowd reflected hope, tears, and renewed faith. Among them, in the back row, sat an old man smiling, his eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. The seed he had planted had grown, and Jacob was now molding others, just as he had been molded. Are you going through a season of struggle, loss, or uncertainty? Remember, you are in the potter's hands. God is shaping you, refining you, and preparing you for something greater. Don't let temporary trials make you doubt your eternal purpose. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Let them know they are not alone. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more inspiring stories that will uplift your faith and remind you of God's unfailing love. Stay strong, keep believing, and trust the process, because the potter is not finished with you yet.